Hello, welcome back to another edition of Road Talk with Cade. Today in my life is February 2nd, 2026. The past month has been a trying one to say the least. I find myself to be a bit lost right now. No direction, no purpose in life, a ship with no rudder, a horse who has lost its rider. I come to the show today bringing nothing but bad news from yours truly. Starting with my girlfriend breaking things off with me, to getting a hefty speeding ticket. The speeding ticket is what it is. I wasn't paying attention to the speed change and got dinged in a speed trap. I'm over it. On top of all that, I've been completing another dry January, which means I have not been drinking nor doing much socializing. With the unpredictable January weather, I found myself cooped up in my apartment in times where I would much rather not be alone. As of writing this, the calendar is officially turned to February, and I hope with the change of the month, I can find myself in a new light. Having completed dry January, I guess it isn't all bad, as I have completed one of my goals for the year. Today's topic of discussion is going to revolve around the relationship I am now on the backside of, and where I'm at mentally. I think everyone out there has been in a flash-in-the-pan relationship like the one I was recently in. You fall into this passionate love with a stranger you just met. The world ceases to exist outside of your newfound love interest, losing yourself in the fun of fresh romance that you've so long waited to come into your life. Then, with a snap of a finger, everything is over. The relationship moves at a pace where things are falling apart around you before you realize that things are going wrong. Just like the way the relationship started, it stops dead in its tracks. You wake up one morning and you are left with nothing but silence. Over the past few weeks of solitude, I've had a lot of time to sit in that silence, taking time to reflect on the relationship, my mistakes in it, and the realization that it would have never worked from the start. For myself, it is clear to see I completely lost myself. There has been a burning hole inside of me, begging God to bring someone into my life, to hold, love, and support. As stated, with the rapid start to the relationship, there were no boundaries. No pace for me to step back and make sure I was holding up my end of the bargain. In every aspect of what I thought I was as a man, I seemed to fail, making mistakes faster than I could correct my last wrong action. Sadly, I was not able to hold up to my end of the bargain. Just as fast as she came into my life, she went out again. To her, I wish her nothing but the best. You're a great person with a great head on your shoulders, that deserves the best of this world. Someone to hold you and let the light in your soul shine as bright as it possibly can. I wish I could have been that person, and I'm truly sorry for letting you down. I pray to God that He brings that person into your life, and you get to live the life of your dreams. To shine the light back on me, which was one of the major issues that ended the relationship. My selfishness was my own demise. I already stated that I lost myself in the relationship. Now being removed from the situation, I don't really know who I am right now. In the 2 short months that the romance lasted, I did learn a lot about myself. A lot about the person I am that functioned inside of a relationship, revolving more than me. Finding out that I'm not the chivalrous man I thought I was inside of my own head. Looking back altogether, I'm not nearly the man I thought I was. As someone who has not done much dating over the past few years, I've done countless hours working on myself. With all those hours alone, I lost sight of what it takes to properly care for another person in my life. So my wish for God came true, and He brought someone into my life to teach me the lesson of humility, as I'm not nearly what I thought I was only mere months ago. Over the past 2.5 years, I have spent much of my life isolated, alone with my own thoughts and own life. I haven't involved another person extensively in my life during that time, so I forgot many of my shortcomings as a man, things that back in the day I just thought I was young and naive to. Blinded between distance from previous relationships to the peace of my own solitude. Not only that, but I am so used to servicing my own life, I didn't know what it takes to take care of another person properly. For all those years I had been working hard on myself. What I thought was bettering myself was creating deeply rooted selfish tendencies. Growing my bank account and traveling to my own benefit. What I thought was finding myself was mostly growth on a superficial end of the spectrum, adding no true depth to my character, only fluff that looks good to the rest of the world through our phone screens, which has caused me to be lacking the skills needed to have a serious relationship, things like empathy, a supportive environment, and communication. I've been alone for so long that caring for another beyond thank yous or holding doors open didn't register in my brain like it should have. All things that I need to work on become the quality of man I want to be someday. So that one day, that God does bring that person to my life, I can care for her as she deserves. Between the solitude and the bout of depression that I found myself in, I've crawled into some rather dark and scary corners of my brain, places I haven't been in a while. After rewrites and rough drafts, we will stay focused more on my mental state, dealing with this heartbreak. Between the weather and my sadness, I found myself sleeping in more, spending days on the couch rather than in the woods. As I stated above, I had a pretty shit January. I'm now trying to find a balance between giving myself some grace, as I regather myself, while still trying to stay at least somewhat on top of my shit at the current moment. I can tell you that I am not happy in my current state of life. In December, I felt like I had the world by the balls. On top of my powers, everything I wanted was coming together, which is always the perfect time for life to slap you in the face, putting me back in my place. In regards to my day-to-day life, I wanted to let you in on what that looks like. I've been sleeping in much more than normal, dragging myself through workouts at the gym with little to no vigor that I usually find inside of myself when getting a lift in. With the saddened times, I've spent countless hours soul-searching. Even with such a short relationship, I forgot what I loved so much about being a hermit. 6 months ago, I was totally alone and happy in my own whimsy. Today is much the opposite. Sitting alone in a coffee shop, staring out a window, with no joy to be shared with myself or anyone else. With these lonely days, I have been trying my best to stay busy, completing all my normal tasks. My main social activity, drinking, has not been there. So, the claustrophobia of being cooped up in my apartment has been getting to me at times. Lucky for me, on the last Saturday in January, I woke up to a pristine layer of white powder covering the ground, enough to make a worthwhile trip up to Hatley Point for a couple hours of snowboarding. An expensive activity that I wish I got to do more. Between where I live and the cost of the adventure, I'm lucky that I get to do it once a year down here. With that being said though, I still find myself rather lifeless on the hill. This overarching existential dread called heartbreak doesn't leave my side. It has followed me through work, the gym, and everywhere else I used to enjoy that made my life worth living. Like a shadow on the ground while I hike, it is ever present. Not always the same size, but always there to remind me. The weekend after that, I attended my first concert of the year, by myself as usual. Same thing. While seeing a young artist I enjoy, I can still feel that breath of sadness in the back of my neck. A feeling that I haven't felt in years, like meeting an old friend for the first time. When I had been at a more positive frame of reference, I look back at previous hard times and only remember the joy that I found at the peaks after it. Seeing this old face in the mirror again has scared me out of my normal wits. Now as I sit in the aftermath of my own shortcomings as a man, these have been very introspective times, turning me back to a book, Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. 5 years ago, I read this book at one of the really low points in my college career. During that first read, it provided me the inspiration to go out into the world and figure out who I was, to travel that open road, write my own stories, and make my own luck. All things on the outside of myself. This second read-through is sharing with me a much more introspective thought process. Yes, I've gone on those trips. The stories cannot be taken away from me, but those small mountains I once saw in the distance, I have now climbed over to find myself in a new valley. The valley that I share with you today. Not happy with who I am on an introspective level. So as I continue trying to pick myself up from my bootstraps, I stare up at new larger mountains that were blocked from my view earlier in life. These mountains are no longer on the outside, but coming from the inside of my own mind. As I wallow in my own sadness, my mind has started to turn again, knowing that the only way to go is forward on this journey. What is done has been done. I may wish it would have gone differently, but that is out of my control now. It is time to start the climb of this new challenge. To look inside myself, taking the broken puzzle scattered about the floor, picking them up one by one, putting that puzzle back together again in a form that hopefully works better than the last one. This is the moment where the record scratches. It's Saturday, February 14th, Valentine's night. I've been dragging my feet and working on this episode for 2 weeks now. Writing the downtimes is always hard. I wasn't in a good place mentally or physically, as you can all tell. But after all this, it is a journal. This isn't some superficial bullshit. This documentation is about the highs and lows that my life takes me on. Now removed from those harder days, let's leave that part of the episode as is, for what it was and will forever be. My voice in a moment of struggle. My heart is written down on a page. A face staring into the mirror is lost because the reflection looking back doesn't recognize him. Over the past week, I found a renaissance for the life I thought I had forgotten how to live. Plenty of windshield miles, sunshine on my skin, and most of all, finding conversations that provoke thought in my life again. Today, on a holiday I rather despise, I woke up 5 minutes before my brother called me on his way out to sturgeon spearing. He succeeded on that day, harvesting a 55.8-inch, once-in-a-lifetime fish. For me, however, I started my morning by finishing my reread of Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights, then proceeded to mix in some laundry while tidying up my apartment to finish out my morning. Once the home space was in order, I made my way out to Shope's Creek, the mountainside that about 2 years ago taught me my love for hiking. Since that last experience out there, the place doesn't look the same, but it reminded me of the change in my life over the past years as well. A rather ugly sight since Helene came through, but you can start to see a rebirth. A new forest ready to use what's left on the ground to start again. For the trees that perished in the storm, it is now their offspring starting to sprout, growing anew from the chaos that came before it, much where I find myself today. After my wandering, I returned to my apartment, bathed to get the grime out from between my toes, then making myself a ribeye steak on the charcoal grill, paired with asparagus, mushrooms, and baby red potatoes. Not the best meal I've ever concocted, but good enough for me to be happy with how it turned out. Today marks a change in my life, turning over a new leaf. The momentum has started to build in my life again. I have turned the corner and am starting to move forward, taking with me the lessons learned in the past few months, while at the same time holding true in my values and beliefs that I was raised on. On a day about sharing your love with someone else, I find myself in an apartment completely alone. That loneliness has haunted me for the past month, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I have found a footing again. The beast they call sadness no longer consumes me. Between my previous relationship, my rereading of Green Lights, and a more normalized work schedule, my head has risen, taking the first steps up that next trail from the mountain. A mountain of learning from within how to be a more loving and caring man to others around me moving forward. With all that being said, thank you for listening. I love you. Bye.